Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall,
host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Hey there, thanks a lot for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. I know there are many, many podcasts you could choose from, so that you choose us is not a small thing. Thank you. Thanks for the 5-star reviews. Thanks, as always, for your written reviews at Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I want to tell you about my friend in Cincinnati named John Ruhlman. Now, he runs a company called U.S. Medical Plan. And John has been a sponsor of mine and a friend of mine for a long while. And he has gotten calls from this audience, including calls from my own family, calls from colleagues and friends of mine who have shopped with him their current health insurance plan. And he has saved friends and family thousands of dollars, literally. Let me give you a for example. I have a friend who bought private health insurance for his family. His daughter had some special health needs that cost him quite a bit of money a month to get premiums covered for all of them. John found him identical coverage and saved him $2,000 a month. That's jaw-dropping money. My parents called John for a supplemental health insurance plan for their Medicare. John saved them $400 a month. Now, every nickel is precious, particularly when you're sitting on an income that you've got to count on for the rest of your days and you're counting your change. $400 is a lot of money. All right, so that's what John can do for you. Or maybe if you have no health insurance at all and you think it's too expensive, I can't afford it right now. He has over 100 different private health insurance companies all over the country that he shops and compares so that he gets you the best rates and never cheats you on coverage, by the way. It doesn't mean it's some scant coverage. Great rates, great coverage. Let John and his team at usmedicalplan.com go to work for you today. You can also call 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321, usmedicalplan.com. Folks, it's glad to have you along today. Good to be with you on what is a very, very sad day. Of course, it's never a good day when something like this story yesterday happens in Minneapolis. It's always good to be with you, of course. Our telephone number is 855-STIGALL. If you'd like to get in here today, of course, everyone's thoughts, everyone is mindful of what went on yesterday in Minneapolis. And, I don't know what to say about it, except the coverage of it is pretty typical. The analysis of it has been sadly pretty typical. And all I can keep thinking about as a father myself, who's not this far removed from having kids in elementary school and middle school and high school, is as guardians of our families and our communities, we can't continue to ignore the escalating threat that is posed by transgender ideology and evil incarnate. That's all I can tell you. We can't continue to harbor, foster, and encourage evil in our midst. We're talking about a 23-year-old male who thinks of himself as a female, whose mother apparently enabled this by changing this young man's name. She apparently worked at this school. He apparently attended this school at one point. You take a guy who was formerly a young male and try to convince him, or he tries to convince himself he's a female. And now 2 children are dead, 17 more injured during a mass. This mentally ill shooter embodies a real troubling pattern of mental instability that is fueling violence. And you just need look no further than the data itself. Whether you're talking about trans or non-binary or whatever the nonsense is, these people, these biological males who consider themselves trans, commit mass shootings at a far greater rate than traditional, typical white men. Real statistics bear this out. These trans shooters, when averaged out across these god-awful incidents, they lead the pack. That's just true. And the recent examples of this, Uvalde, Denver, Georgia, Nashville, Colorado, Aberdeen, Iowa, Philadelphia, all of these involve individuals who identified as trans. These are not abnormalities. They are symptoms of a profound psychological problem. And I am sick and tired of this country, the American left, and sadly, many of our most prestigious medical institutions, schools, God forbid, even some churches, who are entertaining this as anything other than psychological distress. Trans individuals, or people that call themselves this, face an alarmingly high suicide rate as well, in case you hadn't heard. Over 40% of people who identify as trans attempt suicide. That is a figure that also far exceeds the general population. Instead of providing genuine psychiatric help, political activists are pushing minors into these disastrous, I say evil, hormone therapies and irreversible surgeries, puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, which totally disrupt brain development, totally exacerbate their existing instability and insecurity. If anybody reads at all any studies on this, and there have been plenty done in Europe, this stuff ultimately leads, this transing stuff, it leads to regret, detransitioning, thousands and thousands of dollars in surgeries to undo the madness that they tried to do the first time, and it worsens mental health. This isn't gender affirming, it's gender denying. And it harms children. And it subjects them to drugs that mimic schizophrenic activity. And I just throw in there, and I realize some people think I'm a wet blanket or, a square or whatever for saying it. Cannabis use is rampant among these shooters. All of them. Almost every one of them. Alex Berenson highlights THC as the drug of choice for mass killing. And that includes those who are transgender. It triggers paranoia and psychosis and violence, particularly in vulnerable individuals. Furthermore, you have trans youth reporting far higher rates of cannabis use across the board, and that correlates with mental health breakdowns, if you're going to be honest about the analysis. So we've reached a tipping point. Drug-fueled, untreated episodes now statistically endangering lives and society writ large. Misguided political policies shielding this crisis. Talking about guns and gender-affirming care, it's pit of hell stuff. But you're not going to be able to protect children or any of the rest of us by not acknowledging the problem, the real problem. Banning minor children from having transitions, mandating therapy and mental health, and cutting access to THC and guns for mentally ill people. Yes, that too. Time to start a national conversation, and we got to focus first on healing the minds of this country's young people. And how do you do that? Well, here's Dr. Stigall's simple diagnosis, and I realize some people may think this is overly simple. Gender-affirming care is a lie. It's a pit of hell lie. Children don't need to hear that. Children need to be taught about their inherent worth and their perfect design by a creator. Children need to be reminded that they are loved and chosen and perfectly designed. Children of God. Children belong to God, not to us. They are gifts, which means our job as parents is not simply about protecting children. It's about empowering them to recognize their value and from where that value comes. Not money, not the right political party, and certainly not the idea that your creation or your creator was some big mistake and that modern science and medicine can somehow make you into something you really ought to be because God created an error. Children need spiritual nourishment as much as they need food and shelter. Children are a gift from God, and they need to be told so. They must be taught about the nature of the kingdom of heaven, not that heaven is something that you can achieve or ever be achieved here on earth yourself if you just buy the right stuff or have the right friends, or, yes, as if you even could, change your gender. Children need our time. Children need our touch. Children need our availability to speak with them regularly. They need to be heard by us. And we, in turn, need to tell them the divine, important story of our Lord and Savior, Christ's life, his death, his resurrection, and most of all, about his grace and his forgiveness and our ultimate reward, which is not here. It is not a destination that can be achieved here on earth. We have to help children see the value in creation and the value of life and respect for a creator in all of it. Don't allow children to think life is an accident, that their life is an accident, and that it's just a big cosmic accident, a mistake, and that they somehow just lost the cosmic accident lottery. Young children who lost their lives yesterday, those two, the other 17 injured, but specifically those two precious children who lost their lives yesterday, they were preparing their day by worshiping their Creator. They were getting prepared to worship for the day. And as young children and with parents of those young children, they saw inherent value in that from an early age, thank goodness, because we know where they are today. Now, that doesn't mean people won't develop psychological problems. That doesn't mean mental illness isn't real. It doesn't mean you can always pray away mental illness. Don't misunderstand me. I get it. People struggle with mental illness. But, again, it's on parents. It's on us to watch for that stuff and recognize and combat that stuff, not promote it and affirm it and ignore it. Gun control and gender-affirming care, again, pit of hell lies that we're told ultimately to distract from the real fight we face each and every day, and we always have. Evil in our time is real, and it's constantly on the prowl. Our nation, our children need Jesus. Our homes need to know how to teach and pray over the words of our Creator. Our children's lives depend on that. More in a minute. I don't know. It's I could spend all morning probably playing for you these ridiculous Democrats and their typical reaction. It maybe even seems hardly worth it. But anyway, I'm glad you're here. I certainly welcome your perspective and your comments on it. We were talking about it during the break. Alex brought up to me a minute ago, he said, look, we overly medicate kids too. That's certainly another part of it, giving them these Adderalls and Ritalins and all of this stuff, particularly our young boys. They're chock-a-block pumped full of meds because, again, science and medicine continues to suggest that boys who don't want to sit still ought to be overly medicated. Being a boy has been, as we have long talked about on this show, criminalized. I mean, we just did a show on this yesterday. That's what's so haunting to me is just yesterday I put this show to bed and I had just talked about this pit of hell, disgusting lie called transgenderism and how the Trump administration is trying to root it out. And at best, the best they can do is cut off federal funds to institutions that are trying to teach our kids that they were born a colossal mistake and that there's a medical way to fix them. And there are professional medical people profiting off of that madness, that science fiction, and that butchery. It's infuriating. It's manipulation of the highest order. And yes, I do think our medical and scientific community have a lot to do with this. I think when someone like this does something like this, we have to have a long talk about the people around this person who enabled them. And I'm not afraid to say, I think there's culpability. Now, ultimately, yes, when you pull the trigger of a gun and you murder people, that's on you. That's only on you. I'm not somebody that believes that you can control another person's nature or will, ultimately. But this is not someone whose red flags weren't clear to many, many people. And when you have parents and adults around someone like this who see this mental illness and do nothing about it and alert no one to it, say nothing about it. And in fact, if the reports are true, sorry, yeah, I'm going to beat up on the mom here for a minute. Sounds like mom was one of these sicko enablers. Sorry, I realize that may not be something we're allowed to say today, but I'm going to say it, damn it. If you're a parent and you're enabling this kind of mental illness in your child, you're entertaining it and you're taking them to the doctor and the doctor is pumping him or her full of this stuff, meds, potential surgeries, telling young children that they are some sort of cosmic mistake that medicine can fix. If you're doing that and then they grow up and do something like happened yesterday, that blood is just as much on that doctor's hands and on that parent's hands as it is on the killer. There, I said it, and I'm not apologetic about it, and I won't take it back, and I'll double down on it, in fact. As I said yesterday, I'll say again, our kids are dying, and I'll die on this hill because we're killing them. We're offering fast tracks to children's deaths and executions with this madness and this chaos. I will not, as long as I have a microphone, as long as I have this platform, I will die sooner than I will ever entertain a young person being manipulated into thinking that they were some kind of mistake that medicine can alter and fix. That is straight up pit of hell lies. And I won't be a party to it. I won't play patty cake with it. I'm not going to listen to a single person. And I don't care if they're my best friend. If my best friend came to me and said, my child thinks he's not a boy, I'd say, you need help, real help. I pray for you. I welcome you to worship. Your child needs to talk to a professional who does not entertain and pump them full of that. You, as an adult, need to get right with the Word of God. You need to get into a house of worship and understand from whom we come and whose we are. That's what I'd say to my best friend or my sister or my brother or my cousin or my uncle or anybody I knew that was even close to me that came to me and said, I think my child wants to be a different gender. That is madness. And it's a fast track to leading the great majority of them into either what happened yesterday or just offing themselves. This is sick. It cannot and must not be entertained, not in any form or fashion. And shame on the medical community that has profited from this. That makes me more angry than maybe just about any of it. You know, it's one thing to entertain it or encourage it, and then it's quite another to say, oh, right this way, cut us a check and I'll give you a surgery, or I'll pump you full of pills and help you live out your fiction. People should lose their medical licenses for that. People should be thrown in jail for that. Okay, let's get to the phone. We'll go to William in New York to kick off the show today. William, what is on your mind? Glad you called. Good morning.
MAGA harumphs to you, Chris, and a blessed good day to you and all our friends out there.
Amen. Thank you, sir.
Oh, always. I'm about 10 years older than you, a little more. And I remember growing up in a much different country. When I began school in 1971, we still had, for lack of a better term, insane asylums. We had fewer gun laws. We still had, in my public school, some recognition of God. And we were a better society. We have steadily removed these things, and I know this because I've been a school teacher for nearly 30 years. We have removed the good things and replaced them with bad things. You can't mention God. You can't mention that someone needs treatment. But you can tell kids that they're going to die from climate, that cigarette smoking is going to kill them, and guns are to be avoided. And it is the exact opposite. It's anti-biblical. It's, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. This is Psalm 97:10 manifested. We, those who love God must hate evil. And these people are promoting evil. They have been. Even well-intended people are promoting this evil. So I agree with you 100%. And I know I've seen it. I see it every day when I teach my kids. They don't know anything about the goodness, and they know all the badness, and they're taught to be afraid. And we've got to get away from that.
That I tell you something, that is one of the most significant things anyone can say about culture today in 2025. William, what you just said, teaching our children to be fearful and be afraid. That is unto itself the absolute worst thing you can do. We have made kids neurotic as hell and given them this idea that not only should they be afraid of everything, but everything of which they're afraid they can fix if only they take some kind of action themselves. They believe, they're conditioned to believe that we are in control of all of it. And control is maybe the greatest lie of all. Your idea in your own head that you control the universe, you control the climate, we, collectively, we are in control. We're driving. And if only we behave and pass the right laws and do the right things, we can ultimately control the outcomes of all of this that we're living. Again, straight up, pit of hell lies. The idea of control is a myth. It is a fiction. And I couldn't agree with you more, William. You teach kids to despair and fear and then give them this mythical idea that they're in control of all of it anyway. Of course you grow up becoming anxious and anxiety-ridden. Of course you do. 855 Stigall. Let's go to Scott next in California. Scott, I'm glad you called. Good morning. Welcome in.
Hey, good morning, Chris. Just tragic in Minnesota. And this is like the fifth or sixth one, but for years, Democrats and mainstream media have told us that we should normalize this, that we should accept this and affirm this, and we need to completely reject it. In California, there's I don't know if you heard the story, the male playing in women's sports. It was the track and field, Eastville High School. Well, now this male is playing in volleyball against girls, and they haven't played a game yet because people in California are waking up and every game has been forfeited. And this ideology has to be called what it is. It's mental illness and it's evil. And it starts with the pronouns. They want you to accept the fact that he is a she and she is a he. That's where it all begins. We need to reject it. It's buying into mental illness and evil. And we cannot allow this to remain in our society and move forward until we reject it. And, it's weird to me, Chris, and I'm sure they're aware of it. That's probably why the Latinx AstroTurf term came up. The two demographics that reject this wholeheartedly are Latinos and black men. They reject it, and we need to back those individuals. We need to back our families. We need to be more God-centered, family-centered, and put these people out to pasture. We're done with them. We cannot accept this in our country anymore. And like I said, the last 5 or 6 were pronoun people. And it's the pharmaceutical companies, you're right. They're absolutely backing this. They're making money off of it, and it's destroying our society.
Scott, thank you very much. Very well said. I can't add anything to that. 855 Stigall if you want to get in here. Fast Eddie asked me during the break if I watched the killer's video that he apparently posted, I guess, at the same time that he opened fire on this mass in Minneapolis yesterday. I have not. I guess it was up long enough that a lot of people, I have not sought it out. I was tempted to yesterday. I heard a lot of people talking about having watched it. You did, Ed. You actually, how much of it did you watch? How long was it?
So there were two. The first one was 20 minutes long, and he's paging through his manifesto. So I didn't read all of that, but I did get to the end of that. That was 20 minutes, and then the second video, which was like 11 minutes long, and that's where he's got the camera down, kind of facing all of the disgusting things that he's kind of displaying for the viewer, like his guns, his magazines, things like that.
Yeah, and are both of these videos of that day, or like the 20-minute one comes from an earlier time?
I believe.
Or do you have any idea?
I believe they're the same day. I believe because they were posted to go out at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And you said you watched it all. You rode with it?
The second one, yes, I did.
And your takeaway?
This is a very, very disturbed individual. I don't know how this could be missed by anybody. I don't know how anybody would affirm this person in any way. He should have been put away. It's dark stuff. It's anti-Semitic. It's anti-Trump. Very mild-tempered about what he's about to do to children. Just kind of like speaking about it flippantly.
At ease with it, calm about it.
Yes, that's it. Yes. It's scary. It put me in a
full of rage and full of hate and very, very still in the evil that he's about to commit.
That's exactly right. And his tone doesn't really change other than at some point when he wants to highlight some of the things that it says on his magazine or one of his thoughts. It's weird, Chris. It almost sounds like he's possessed in some of those moments because it's that even tone all throughout, and then he changes almost like the Joker in The Dark Knight. It's very terrifying.
And look, at 24, whatever this person was, 23, that's an adult male, okay? So I was married and had my first home at 23, all right? So at almost 50, my tendency now is to want to call him a kid, but, I was married with a home at age 23 with my first full-time job. So this is a grown man, but you don't get here, to your point, Ed, overnight. This grown man did not arrive here yesterday.
No, of course not. And this manifesto was handwritten too. Like that's the thing. Like you very intentionally have to sit there and read each page as he's paging through, and you realize that he has written all of it. It's not like printed out.
Yeah. All right. I'll play some of the video and audio of the day yesterday coming up. Of course. I mean, it's. The Democrats' reaction to these things is almost entirely typical. I mean, mocking prayer and people who would say, let's pray, the Jen Psaki's of the world who say, screw your prayers. And the really, really, probably the most ignorant of all of it are the people who say, well, see what praying gets you? Those children were praying, and look at them now. What a total non sequitur that is. And how heartbreaking that your life is so empty and so hollow and so devoid of hope and, again, trust and belief in a creator and something bigger than yourself, that you actually arrogantly laugh at and mock prayer like it does no good and it's not worth anyone's time. And that somehow if those kids had been praying either the right way or prayer was real, you don't... Look, it is a very, very narrow path to get to Jesus. It's a very, very narrow path to get to heaven. Prayer and being a Christian does not guarantee us anything in this world. We're not guaranteed anything, whether we're on our knees or not. More in a minute. Ryan's in Minnesota, where people are probably feeling most close to this, unfortunately, today. Ryan, glad you called. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, so I'm still reeling a little bit from what happened yesterday, but what really strikes me the most is the day before I did a walkthrough with my son at the middle school, open house, everybody's getting excited, everybody's getting ready, and it's like they have wallpapered the entire school with transgender flags. They are on every wall, they are in every classroom, there's still Black Lives Matter signs up. All are welcome. This is a safe place. It's everywhere. I thought we were past this. And then this happened yesterday. So I've been fighting with the school board and the schools about their propaganda since 2020. And every time I finally get an opportunity to speak with somebody, they point Tim Walz. This is a governor's order because we live in a blue ribbon district, and these are blue ribbon schools, which is considered a high academic school or whatever. It's just supposed to have the best scores. And he insists on these schools leading the charge and having all this propaganda in them. This is what I'm being told by principals and by the district leaders.
Well, Ryan, I appreciate your call very, very much. I say this with respect. You know, I heard a woman yesterday lamenting to someone. She had a young child that was just about school age, and she said, I'm scared to death. I'm scared to death to send my child to school, a public school, because of things like this. I'm scared to death. I've decided, says this woman, almost defiantly, like she had this epiphany, I'm going to homeschool my son. And I thought to myself, good. Now, look, I understand. I understand finances. I understand all of it. I understand all the reasons. I went through them, too, as a parent. I don't sit here on a perch telling you I'm perfect or that I have all the answers or that I know. But I'm just telling you, it's axiomatic. When you hand your kids over to Caesar, don't be surprised when he or she comes home as a Roman. I don't know what to tell you about it. I wish I had something smarter to say, but politicians do not have your child's best interests at heart. Our Lord God does, and you do as their parent. Politicians, and God bless them, there are many, many fine people who, again, my mother, a public school teacher, 30 years, my wife did it for 10. I'm not saying all public educators are bad people. I'm not saying every Christian school is perfect either, by the way. It's not. This crap is going on in many Christian schools, believe it or not. That's the stunning thing. So there's no, folks, I don't know how to say this. There is no state-run organization you can hand your kids over to where you can feel rest assured you're not going to have them exposed to this garbage. I want you to understand that. That's a hard truth. It's very difficult to hear, and I'm not trying to insult you or get your back up or make you feel bad about your station in life or the way you're raising your kids. I'm not. We all do our best. We're all doing what we think we got to do, or what's best for our families or whatever. All right? That's your business. I'm just telling you, there is no organization run by the state or the federal government or politicians or public servants that is going to educate and protect and raise your children up in the way they should go better than you. No one but you can do that for your child. And so all the school board meetings and all the protesting and all the outrage about stuff that's hanging in your kids' schools and the exposure that they're receiving to this stuff, it's not going to quit. It will. You're not going to defeat it that way. You're going to defeat it by bringing Christ into your home and taking control of your kids' educations. Gosh, I know that sounds harsh. And I know you say, but it's expensive, and we've got a mortgage, and we need 2 salaries, and we need. Well, what you don't need is your child handed over to the state to be corrupted. You can't get that back. Bills can be tight for a few years, maybe 18 years. But you only get one shot at it. And I frittered away a lot of time. I frittered away a lot of time as a dad and a parent. I know of what I speak here. So I appreciate wanting to return to a place where everyone in our community shared our values and everyone was interested in just teaching kids instead of indoctrinating them, but that day is long gone. Evil is pervasive, and indoctrinators inhabit these places of public education. It's just a fact. Excellence in dentistry. That's what you're going to get at Williamsburg Dental. My friend Bob Spinato is back on the phone. He's in Broomall, just off the Blue Route. And with 2 new associates, now you can expand and offer more hours, maybe evening hours, possibly weekends, Bob.
Yeah, one of the things that I told them from early on when they started with me was the value of not only their own time, but other people's times. And they run on a similar schedule that I do. If you've got a 1 o'clock appointment, you're in their chair at 1 o'clock. And it's something that across the board at Williamsburg Dental, we really pride ourselves on, whether it's an appointment with the hygienist or whether it's an appointment with one of our doctors. The other thing is we now have some expanded hours in the evenings, and even there's some discussion about opening again on some Saturdays for services.
Yeah, but not you. You're fishing. You're not kidding anybody. It's not you going to be working on Saturday. Come on,
well, I'm in my 33rd year, and it should be the young guns.
That's so right. You've earned it. You've earned it.
I feel like I have. Thank you.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, on a somber Thursday, another one of these shows that we have to do, I'm sorry to say, and we're grateful to those listening on The Patriot in Minneapolis today. Our hearts are with those of you in Minneapolis today and all over the country because these things continue to happen, and so often they happen at the hands of people who desperately need help and should have had help, and they should have had people around them that could have brought them the help they need. We covered a lot of that in hour one. A lot of you have things to say about this too. 855-STIGAL is our telephone number. I want to get to our guest in just a moment. I did want to get Steve in Michigan, who happens to be a retired law enforcement officer. He's been waiting patiently. And Steve, I'm glad you called. Thanks for your patience. Good morning.
How you doing? I got to close my office door.
Yes, sir.
I've retired. I've been retired 20 years, but I'm still in the police world at a training site. We are training here every week, federal, state, county, local departments. I've been across this nation. To quote Levin, the police and the military are what's right about America. They are doing a great job. But your previous caller brought in the spiritual. And I was thinking about the verse in Psalm 127, unless the Lord builds or watches the city, the watchmen labor in vain. That's what's happening. We've abandoned our Christian principles. We've allowed, as John MacArthur, who just recently went to be with the Lord, say, we're letting the insane making laws for the insane. When you are right, we need to stop this because good people are going to continue to get killed. And this one bothered me. I think it's because of the Marxist underpinnings. First thing they did, what did Jacob Fry do? The same thing he did in 2020. He let the city burn. As you said a few weeks ago, the Marxists, the left, are hollowing out the nation. They haven't even rebuilt that station in Minneapolis, the 3rd precinct. They're leaving that as a reminder. They're trying to hollow out the nation. So we got good cops. I want you to know that. We got good cops all across this country. And we are fortunate to have such men and women. But I think, Chris, until we get down on our faces before God Almighty, this carnage is going to continue to happen.
Beautifully said, Steve. There's nothing I can add. This is a brilliant audience, and you can't add to that. Thank you. Thank you for your service in law enforcement. I turn to another fine law enforcement officer of many, many years. He's now a talk show host, and he brings this kind of wisdom to the air in Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area every single day on WILK News Radio 103.1. He's Rob O'Donnell, retired NYPD detective, host of the Rob O'Donnell Show. Rob, I wish there were happy circumstances that we invite you on the show. Typically they are not, but you heard Steve there a minute ago. I welcome you in. Good morning. I mean, there are great men and women. Again, it's times like this, you, as Mr. Rogers put it so simply and succinctly, beautifully years ago, look for the helpers in times like this. That's what you guys are. You're the helpers. Good morning.
Morning, Chris. And you said it perfectly in your prior segment. Evil is pervasive. And thank God for the peacemakers. That's all I can say in situations like this.
I'm reticent to ever start analyzing how police work is handled or managed in the moments, the hours, the days after something like this. But certainly in the ensuing hours, when whoever it is, the chief or otherwise, has to step before microphones and start telling the press and talking to people about what they know and what they don't know. I think a lot of people kind of, in our 24-hour news cycle and social media cycle attitudes, we think we should have all the answers, and because we know something on X, the police chief should jump on and confirm everything we've seen on X. That's not the way this works, right?
No, not at all. But in situations like this, I was one of the first to kind of identify who the shooter was, not by name, but the generic who this was. Within an hour of this incident happened, I was contacted by both local law enforcement supervision and federal law enforcement that was on the scene. And this is within an hour of this incident. And they said, we need you to get on this. We respect that you'll put information out there that's respectful of the investigation, that respects the victims, that still many were not even notified yet, the families in this, and still reuniting. But they felt pressure from above, outside of law enforcement, to follow a narrative rather than the facts and the evidence. And it was infuriating local law enforcement on the scene. So they reached out to me again within the hour, pointed me in the right direction, and I started doing my own investigation and found a lot out there. I was able to download the videos that were on YouTube before they were scrubbed and taken away. And, I placed generic portions out there that I thought were need to know by the public. And again, my X account had gotten 20 million views on that. So it obviously worked to hold authorities accountable, to let them know that we know the facts and we know the information that's really out there. And if you try and spin this, we're going to hold you accountable. And it was infuriating law enforcement at the scene. Not only are they dealing with this tragic situation, but they're dealing with this outside political nonsense to kind of scrub an incident that we should know everything about, because how do we prevent the next one unless we get to the core of this one?
Obviously, the left always runs to the same old thing. It's the gun, it's the gun, it's the gun, it's the gun. There's nothing about the guns used in this attack, this awful terrorist attack. That's what it was. Nothing illegally obtained here. All three firearms, as I read and understand, were legally procured. Law enforcement, those of you who do this, I almost never hear you guys ever jump to it's the guns. And you guys are literally on the receiving end of bullets flying many times. And yet that's not your reaction. Why?
Because you can make all the laws you want about guns. You can infringe on people's Second Amendment rights. If you don't care about murdering children, do you really care about crossing a state line with a firearm that you shouldn't have? Do you really care about a magazine that maybe holds more bullets than your state law says or federal law says? No, criminals are going to break the law. This was I watched the two videos that this individual uploaded just as this incident started. So for those out there saying, well, if these posts were out there, if these YouTube videos, how come they didn't flag it? Because he timed them to be posted exactly about the time that this attack started. And I watched the two videos, an 11-minute video and a 20-minute video. And in my 3 decades in law enforcement, it was troubling. Multiple personalities, demonic voices, the things he said, the things he wrote down are extremely troubling. A diagram of the inside of the church where he uses his finger and shows where he's going to enter this church, and then stabs it in the middle with a dagger and says, "Where I die." He holds up a revolver, which a pistol was recovered at the scene, but in his video that was before this that he posted, there were 4 firearms. There was the rifle, the shotgun, semi-automatic handgun, and a revolver. And he holds up the revolver and says, "This is for me when it's needed." But he stabs it with the dagger and says, "This is where I die." This was a deranged individual. There were videos as far as 4 years prior. He only had 5 videos on his YouTube, but even the video from 4 years prior where he's dictating a manual for a home dryer next to your washing machine, the manual, the operator's manual, but in such a demonic way, how this dryer can kill you. How family members around him, how someone in this individual's ecosphere did not see the trouble in this individual from 4 years ago. And then since then, get a name change to his identity. And we have to look into how these firearms were purchased. I mean, you're talking thousands of dollars in weapons and ammos. How did that happen? So I really severely focused on the ecosphere around this individual.
That is where I wanted to go next, Rob O'Donnell. As a retired NYPD detective, we know multiple search warrants have been issued for, I guess, multiple properties. This is a 23. I mean, he's a grown man, but his mother changed his name apparently when he was a minor still. They think he went to this school. Brothers and sisters, there's family, there's people around this person. What's the culpability? Do we need to start talking honestly, seriously? What's the culpability that all of us share when we share spaces, living spaces, work spaces, worship spaces, whatever. What culpability have we as a community when someone like this, who's clearly a ticking time bomb, nothing is done, and then they do something like this? Parents, family, as a matter of law, do you think we need to start having a conversation about that?
Well, I think that conversation should always be. This is an attack on the family. You can't blame law enforcement here because of their response time. You can't blame them because there weren't that many people there. You can't blame the firearm. You can't blame the community or people who maybe saw this video and didn't report it. The people closest to him, who loved him the most, next to him, probably on a daily basis, 24/7, didn't raise any flags. There was no prior criminal history. He was able to purchase these firearms legally, so there was no mental health documentation that was out there. How do we blame anything else without first looking at the family circle around this individual, that if just me watching 30 minutes of video could see how disturbed this individual was, how did they not see it? So yes, they need to be held accountable. They need to be questioned. And I'm not talking criminally culpable. If they did, then that needs to be looked at as well. But that's where all this starts. That's where the people closest to you have to take responsibility for getting you the help you need when you're mentally deranged.
Rob O'Donnell hosts the Rob O'Donnell Show. I'm certain it was compelling radio yesterday as all of this was unfolding throughout the day. 3 to 6 every afternoon on WILK News Radio 103.1. Find him on X as well for the best commentary when things like this happen. I'm sorry, it has to be these things that happen to talk with him, but you're the best, Rob O'Donnell. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me, my friend.
More in a moment. Glad to have you along on The Answer in Dallas, AM 660. Thanks for being here. Heavy day today. Just these are the toughest. These are the ones you never. Talking about dead children is at the hands of a psychopath that should have been prevented. Is just, it's one thing to talk about a natural disaster like a flood, but when you hear about the news of yesterday, you just in a million years will never understand how there is a political movement, how there are people in our midst that entertain and harbor and are hospitable to and promote and maybe even try to legislate their madness, their evil, sanctioning behavior that ends up getting our most innocent killed. It's unfathomable, and it's why talking about this in simple political terms for me has left me feeling a little hollow. I could play you all of the reprobate Democrats today saying all of their reprobate things. I'm kind of tired of giving them airtime. I'm kind of tired of watching and listening to the reprobates. We know they're reprobates. I'm not entirely convinced that a good number of them aren't wholly possessed by straight up evil. And I'm reticent to say that only because I know that there are people who would say, well, when you use that kind of rhetoric, all you're doing is inciting violence. Well, here's the thing about me. I recognize and acknowledge evil exists. I don't believe in assassinating people or killing people or murdering evil. I serve a God that will have justice. We are all going to be on our knees on Christ's return. This will be sorted out. Not here, maybe, but it'll be sorted out. So I don't lose a lot of sleep anymore about vengeance and justice and getting even or punishing evil, because I ultimately know how that's going to be sorted out and sifted out. I know that much. What bothers me is in the meantime, there are a number of people who are falling victim to and are either naive to or searching for some sort of meaning, and in doing so, they're naive to or falling victim to the evil, to the salespeople, the pitchmen and women of the evil. You can't talk evil out of being evil. You can pray for it. You can pray for the country. You can pray for elected leaders. But people that are committed to an evil ideology, it's biblical. It's always going to be. There will be no rooting out of evil entirely wherever it's found. It exists. So the choice we have before us is, what are we going to do culturally and in our families to stave it off? And it's going to have to be about more than elections or the right people being on your school board or the right principle, we have to take full control of it. Our children are gifts from God. They are ours, and we must take full control of their development. Who gets to them, who talks to them, who teaches them. But most of all, we've got to fill them with the love of Jesus. We have to teach our young people their inherent value, because the lies of these evil people, these people that hold offices, are called governor and senator and congressman and principal and school board director, these people with titles because they've been elected and are thus assigned authority, or doctor or scientist. We give people these earthly titles, and then they dispense this twisted, sick, perverted, evil crap, and because they've got a title, we treat it as legitimate. And it completely undermines everything that we value at home and that we'd want and try to instill in our children and their lives. And it makes me mad, but I don't find myself even really mad at the evil anymore. It makes me mad that our churches, all of us, and I include myself in it, it makes me mad at myself when I was a younger father that I didn't work harder. I was lazy. Okay? We are in a spiritual war, and you can't be a dead lazy ass like I was. You can't. If you have children, or you want to have children, or you're about to bring children into this world, or you're a grandparent of children, young people, you can't be a sideline sitter. You don't have the luxury to hand these kids off to the secular world and hope for the best. Maybe an election will change the way they're taught. Or maybe if the preacher preaches the right message, or their Sunday school teacher teaches the right lesson. If you are not directly and intimately and consistently involved in the way in which your children are brought up, and teaching them that the only truth and the only trust ultimately that can come out of this world is in the Word of God, if you're not instilling that in your children, you cannot expect anybody else to. And I'm speaking as much to myself as I am to you, I promise. Glad to have you along, Los Angeles. The Answer out there, 8:70 a.m. Our friends Grant and Jen, glad you're with us. We went to the White House on Monday. I want to stay with the program on that, too, because we had some great conversations. The MAHA movement is on the march. Big move, big shakeup at CDC. We're going to talk about that coming up. But Monday we talked with a very impressive guy you may not know. I didn't know. His name is Calley, and he's the senior advisor to RFK Jr. in the MAHA movement. Listen to this. It was my favorite conversation of the day at the White House. Here you go. Well, Calley Means, it is great to meet you in person.
It's great to meet you.
I've read a lot about you. Particularly, to be honest, I was reading the New York Times hit piece on you, which they said you didn't want to comment for. And I don't blame you. Why would you want to talk to them? They write about you as though you're shrouded in mystery. You know, that you've joined HHS and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the MAHA movement. But your background, it's always driven, this storyline is always driven that you come from a place that we shouldn't trust. So I'd always like to give people their own time to tell us who they are and where they come from.
Oh, well, thank you. I think this is a micro part of a larger dynamic happening where Bobby Kennedy and this MAHA conversation has unleashed, I think, a cultural, spiritual conversation about what's going on. I mean, President Trump calls Secretary Kennedy every week and says, I've got your back, go hard, go against these special interests. And millions of women voted Trump for the first time, young people, 50-50 young people for President Trump. Nobody could have imagined that 4 to 8 years ago. And then independents, 50-50. This was many variables, but this energy that President Trump unleashed around really fixing the root cause of our health and food systems, which are two of the largest industries in the country, very powerful industries, I think has both inspired a lot of voters, but inspired a lot of backlash. And my story is pretty simple. I grew up in the swamp, as I was just talking about. I worked for some of these industries, and in the past couple of years have had an awakening led by my sisters, who was a physician, a surgeon, Stanford educated, researched at the NIH. She left the medical system 5 years into surgical residency, said every patient I'm operating on isn't getting better. I'm getting screamed at by my attending surgeons for even talking about dietary interventions for these people that have fundamentally inflammation and metabolic disorders. And she helped me kind of put the pieces together in DC really on a simple thesis, which is that there's many good people in the medical system, but the medical system is predicated on Americans being sick. 95% of the $5 trillion that we spend on healthcare are on managing sickness. And the longer people are sick, the more money the system makes. And it's led us to ignore the root cause of why we're sick, which is that 70% of a child's diet right now is ultra-processed food. And we're over-medicalized. Antidepressant rates and antipsychotic drugs for teenage girls have gone up 800% in the past 5 years. So we've got this really tough dynamic. My sister and I started speaking out, met Bobby Kennedy, Susie Wiles, and some other folks in the Trump campaign early on reached out. There was a lot of animation around this chronic disease issue, and President Trump was talking about this issue well before the Bobby Kennedy endorsement. So I, as Bobby Kennedy said, helped connect the two men shortly after the Butler shooting. I was a small part of it, but I called Secretary Kennedy an hour after the Butler shooting, and we talked about him calling President Trump, and he was feeling, I think, a lot of emotions. I mean, he's had a lot of history, Secretary Kennedy, with assassination attempts, and I think one thing Secretary Kennedy and I bonded over, and I think really connected with a lot of the country, is he's on this mission about children's health. I mean, that's what it's about. And then President Trump was talking about that issue too. So in that moment after Butler, I was able to help with that connection and have a small vantage point into their conversations. And I think this connection that was 1 year ago yesterday has been so powerful and so transformative that I think there's a lot of energy towards me, towards my sister who's up for Surgeon General, and many people in this MAHA movement. There's a lot of animation to tear this movement apart. But the good news is that at its core, something very, very positive, and I call it spiritual, is happening, where when we're in meetings at the highest level, with President Trump, with the administration, we're literally talking about how do we help kids get healthier. That's all we're talking about. And I think in the past 6 months, we've had the best record in modern American history on reforms to our food and healthcare systems. And I think there's a lot of people that don't want that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And I think Mr. Kennedy has consistently said, even up to and including last week, if I saw it, he consistently says that President Trump is helping him deliver on something that he never thought achievable. He just didn't think it was going to come out of this town.
Well, you can go down the list, and I don't think people fully even realize this, but when you look at food reform, what we did is we're not going to be nanny state here, but we're going to look at incentives. And the first thing we did is looked at SNAP, the fourth largest entitlement program. We spent $120 billion on food assistance for lower income people. 70% of it was going to junk food. 70% of that money is going to soda and ultra-processed food. So Bobby Kennedy and President Trump worked with governors around the country, and to this, right as we sit here today, 22 states have worked with the federal government to remove soda and candy from SNAP. So that means more healthy food going to kids. We have worked with the FDA. You won't believe this, but up until the Trump administration, right now, the FDA did not have a list of the chemicals in our food. So before we get into any regulation, it was self-policing from the food industry due to a regulatory loophole. We should at least know what's in our food and be able to study it. So we've reformed that process. We're going to have transformational dietary guidelines. The dietary guidelines under President Biden recommend added sugar as a healthy part of a 2-year-old's diet. They recommend against meat. To this day, they recommend against meat.
And those things are what, lobbying efforts?
The dietary guidelines have been an orgy of corruption and seen as a ultra-processed food lobbying document because the dietary guidelines go into what is served at schools, the military, prisons, government buildings. So it goes into a lot of procurement, and it also has a big cultural impact. I mean, we remember in the 90s the food pyramid, which said basically eat as many carbs as you want, don't eat meat. That still has a lot of legacy to today, and parents, people follow government guidelines. So
not to besmirch Mrs. Obama, but that whole "let's move" thing and "let's get healthy" thing and going after school lunch thing, that was really sort of hollow, given what you guys have achieved in a short period of time at HHS.
Yeah, people bring up Michelle Obama a lot. I mean, I actually credit her in the first year for talking about children's food, but she had the wrong solutions. She developed a 500-page top-down USDA document lecturing schools about meatless Mondays and the type of dietary philosophy. If you notice, MAHA, we're not actually lecturing about whether you should eat kale or this or that. It's really just about whole food. It's about back to basics. So what we're actually doing is making the USDA guidelines much, much simpler and working with schools to empower them to serve, maybe it's more kale in California, more beef in Montana, but it should be whole food. It should be celebrating local farmers. And there's a lot of positive relationships that are being built with states to do that. She also talked about soda taxes, kind of coercive things. We're fixing incentives. SNAP, we should not be paying. Soda's great. People should be able to buy their Coke. We shouldn't be funding that with government programs for lower-income kids.
I was driving down the highway not too long ago, and I saw a Steak and Shake billboard, and it said, "Now beef tallow." Anything else would be sus. It was very funny marketing. Totally embraced it. Good play. What is that? Why should people care about things like that?
Okay, there's been many good policy reforms in the past 6 months, and there will be many more. We're going to have better food labeling too, which is just basic transparency. But I think the greatest accomplishment of this administration, what will go down in history, is there's been a cultural awakening. Every single food company, every single farming company, every single healthcare company is thinking and talking in their boardrooms about the fact that there's a demand from Americans to be healthier. And I actually read a Wall Street Journal article the other day where snacking, just basic junk food snacking, has gone down 8% this year. So parents are reading food labels. Moms are talking to their local schools about better food at the schools. People are becoming more aware of what they're feeding their children. This is a really, really good thing, and it's core and what separates us from Michelle Obama. We're driving public health messaging, societal awakening, which is changing the market.
You know what I'm hearing? I also heard from a couple of people that are senior level alcohol executives. They've said they're seeing a precipitous drop in consumption of alcohol.
It's at an all-time low. Alcohol consumption. So what the administration's doing is legitimizing conversations that are happening around every kitchen table about metabolic health, about, maybe the skyrocketing obesity, diabetes, heart disease rates. It's not just a drug and a pill or a jab that's going to solve those. Maybe we need to think about, our food and what we're putting in our bodies and our over-medicalization. That societal awakening that I really credit President Trump and Bobby Kennedy for will be the greatest legacy. That's what's going to drive health. And we've been meeting with all the CEOs of all the major food companies. They're responding to market demand. Coca-Cola, the majority of their revenue soon will be no-calorie drinks. And their stock's at an all-time high. I think that's great. People are responding to market demand.
Can I ask you why it is? Is it purely bottom line? Is it profit-driven? I choose not to believe that everyone in corporate America is trying to outright poison consumers, right. But they were putting weird things in it, like petroleum-based food dyes. Why? And did it need to be called out before they'd stop?
Yeah, I don't think it's any one person's fault, and I think that's what's tough about this, is why I think it's so important. We've been engaging with every single stakeholder and figuring out how to get beyond this, because everyone agrees the situation's not good right now. But when you look at the stats, and the MAHA report we released goes into these, there's something wrong. So 70% of a child's diet in America is ultra-processed food. It's 15% in European countries. So in European countries, kids are eating predominantly whole food, and here it's junk food. And then you look at that, is that because companies are evil, Americans are trying to poison their kids? No, there's been really bad incentives. So that's what we're doing. We're going through the medical recommendations, the incentives. But when you have a SNAP program that's basically saying it's okay, SNAP pays for Twinkies, SNAP pays for Oreos, SNAP pays for soda. And then food companies actually lobby to make sure that's all essentially people can buy. We have, again, guidelines saying ultra-processed food is not harmful for children. That's what President Biden said. The USDA put out a thing saying a diet, 91% ultra-processed food could be healthy for kids. Totally co-opted. So when you have incentives and then the medical guidelines and scientific guidelines actually recommending this stuff, what are Americans supposed to do? So that's what we're drilling in, the incentives and the guidelines. And I think why one of the greatest accomplishments of this administration, we're getting control of the NIH. The NIH has been a dumpster fire. The NIH funded the creation of the COVID pandemic, funded gain-of-function research, and then it just came out they made $400 million in royalties from Moderna for coming up with the quote-unquote cure. The NIH has not been studying the root cause of why we have the highest cancer rates in the world, why we have the highest rates of diabetes in the world, the highest rates of Alzheimer's. These are all metabolically based conditions tied to our food system. So we're going to get back to good scientific research and then look at health incentives. I mean, we spend $5 trillion on healthcare. we're accepting everything as a given that we're the sickest country in the developed world and then just drugging everyone. And unwinding those incentives is what we're trying to do.
Kathleen, I really appreciate you hanging on because I know you've got some important things to share. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris. How you doing?
I'm heavy. I know everybody's heavy. I'm not unique that way, but it's such a darn dark thing we're dealing with out there, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And, I've been living a life as a mother with a child with schizophrenia. Well, he's 45 now, and I knew something was not exactly right by the time he was 2 or 3 years old. And, of course, I was pinpointed as the problem, even though I fought the system, to the point where it was not diagnosed until 5 years ago. He's had pretty much every diagnosis you can imagine up until 5 years ago when, after that hospitalization, he was diagnosed with the paranoid schizophrenia, which is definitely an appropriate diagnosis. The problem with the system is multiple. It's so many things. It's not for lack of trying. I'm not a saint. I'm a mother who gives a darn. But I've had to fight even police officers and social workers who allow, even though I spent thousands, my husband and I spent thousands of dollars trying to get him help, he would be adjudicated, as incompetent. They give him a 6-month Jarvis rule, which meant, he was forced medications, and all along never could accept this diagnosis. And because of the lack of insight and only 6 months under a Jarvis rule, they allow these poor individuals to go off their meds and become society's problem.
So, Kathleen, I want to understand this because it's important, and a good number of us will never live what you've experienced. Are you saying that there was more that could have been done to help your son at an early age, or channel his illness in a way where maybe, I'm not tying your son's condition to what happened yesterday, but are you saying that we have a system that doesn't even allow for parents to properly deal with and recognize this? Is that what you're saying?
Well, first of all, when we're younger parents and we're busy and we're working and we don't know what we're doing.
Right, sure.
You're trusting the so-called professionals, whether that's teachers, psychiatrists, therapists, doctors in hospitals, that they know what they're doing. And then as they progress and the hormones hit, whether biological hormones or given one now that I'm seeing, I've seen the light on this whole thing with the transgender movement. It's like it's an excuse. It's multiple diagnoses is, well, we don't really know. And when he was younger is, well, we don't want to pull your child out of the classroom and embarrass them and make them feel different by having to go in to see a therapist. So there was, we don't want to label them, I guess was the term that was used. And are
you? I'm sorry. I don't mean to rush you, Kathleen. I don't want to have to cut you off for time. You're saying that you didn't get proper diagnosis and proper help because everybody wanted to sort of just again sort of normalize him and mainstream him, even though you knew better.
Right. And I don't know this woman, the mother, who it's a multiple systemic issue. It's not just the mother. She may have signed on to change the name. She might have bought in the crap. But the bottom line is, I had to spend thousands of dollars to take control of the situation, and even then, after 6 months, he was no longer mandated to be on the meds that he needed to be on, still needs to be on. And I have had to put my life, my husband and I, pretty much on hold to oversee this because nobody seems to care. And it got to the point there in Minnesota where I had to set my son up to be picked up because they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. Twice this happened. I had the first time 3 years ago, my husband and I had to play undercover cop in order to get the police there to pick him up. It's gotten worse because of all of this Black Lives Matter agenda stuff going on. And I had to set him up. He had to get kicked out of his apartment. I had to, after 7 trials from the landlord at his apartment and all the dangerous things that he was starting to go down this path, and nobody would listen to me. I called the cops myself. I was standing in the hallway. I went in there. They
Kathleen,
would say, "Man, we don't want you to go in there." And I'm like, "You have to."
Listen,
they didn't.
Kathleen, I have to run. I'm sorry because of time. I hear exactly what you're saying, and this is something that we must address. I'd like to address in future shows. I'm praying for you, Kathleen. Know that you're not alone on that. More in a minute.
Well, I don't know about you, but losing weight is one of those things I have been battling my entire life. Hi, it's Chris Stigall, and trying to keep it off once I've lost it. Instead of gaining it back, that's also been a very difficult thing. I decided I was going to try something new. I decided I was going to try my PhD weight loss. And I decided I was going to try it because I know personally colleagues and many listeners to the Salem Radio Network that have lost thousands of pounds of weight combined thanks to the My PhD Weight Loss program. So I'm going to call up Dr. Ashley Lucas and the team at My PhD Weight Loss. I'm going to get one of these personal nutrition coaches. I hope you'll join me in this weight loss journey. I hope very soon you and I will be able to brag about all the weight and inches we're losing off our waist. I'd just like to get a little weight off these knees, you know. I'm not getting any younger. It's going to be a lot easier to walk around a golf course this summer. Join me. MyPhDweightloss.com is the website, or 864-644-1900. 864-664-1900 or myphdweightloss.com. Tell them Chris Stigall sent you, and good luck. Here we go.
A major retail chain just canceled a massive order, leaving MyPillow with an overstock of the classic MyPillows, and now it's your gain. For a limited time, MyPillow is offering their entire classic collection at true wholesale prices. Get a standard MyPillow for just $17.98, and if you want more, you can upgrade to a queen size for only $22.98. or a king size for $24.98. Snag body pillows for $29.98 and versatile multi-use pillows for just $9.98. Give your bed a whole new pillow set while supplies last. Visit MyPillow.com today. Use the promo code Chris or call 800-932-5056 to score these amazing deals while they're in stock. Plus, when you order $75 or more in merchandise, you'll receive $100 in free digital gifts. No strings attached. That's right, premium pillows at unbeatable prices and bonus gifts to top it off. Don't wait. Head to MyPillow.com today or call 800-932-5056 right now. And don't forget to use the promo code Chris to grab your standard MyPillow for only $17.98 while supplies last. Glad to have you along, folks. Welcome into this Thursday edition of The Stigall Show. We look live at Chicago, Illinois. Thanks for listening on The Answer, AM 560 there. It's been a busy week here. Not just a heavy news week, but a very busy week. And last hour, if you weren't with us, I really commend the interview to you if you didn't hear with Calley, one of the driving forces behind the MAHA movement. I'll spend a little more time coming up talking about the shakeup at the CDC, the NIH. RFK Jr. is doing some massively important work, and he's striking at the heart of big food and big pharma and the medical establishment, and they hate his guts for it. Well, we talked with Dr. Oz about reforming Medicare and Medicaid as well, and here's what he had to say.
Dr. Oz, it is a thrill to be with you again, sir.
Chris, God bless you for having me on.
Of course. I was talking with Calley a little earlier today. We were just talking about the work that you're all doing, the thing you all share in common. I was just bragging on you all. Masterful communicators. You just are. President Trump values the art of communication as much as he values the work you do.
Well, you're kind to say that. The president is very wise about the reality that you need other people to carry the water sometimes. So if you've got a good story to tell, in my case about Medicare and Medicaid, then go out there and tell it. Why would I burden the president with having to tell all the tales that need to be told about why something as big as healthcare needs to be paid for differently? And he has done the same thing with Secretary Kennedy, who's a very close friend of mine, and just brilliant at his ability to just connect with people. So when you hear him speak about controversial issues, you stop for a second. and you just start to listen. And maybe a little bit of it changes how you feel, which is, again, we're all in the change business in this administration. None of us came here just to babysit the process. So he wants that. Marty McCary, who runs the FDA, brilliant communicator, very influential in the healthcare field. Jay Bhattacharya at NIH, all these guys. When we sit and do press events together, I just marvel at them. I mean, I just sit back and enjoy the words of wisdom, the poetry coming out of their mouths.
You're no slouch yourself, by the way. You're being modest, but you know that. Let me ask you about the way in which you all have talked about this. Your subject matter in particular, Medicare and Medicaid, it is probably the most vilified and politicized item in all of government. Democrats love to use the threat of Republicans killing grandma and grandpa and not giving them their medicine and all those things. That's got to be maddening, because I know who you are and I know what you're trying to do. You're not trying to extinguish Medicare and Medicaid, but
I'm trying to save Medicaid. And the president was very clear on this over and over again. And he would call me up and say, Oz, just get the fraud, waste, and abuse out. That's what we tried to do in the One Big Beautiful Bill. And it is, to me, frustrating, alarming that others would construe that as purposely trying to hurt the program. If you looked at what happened during COVID, there was a desire to use Medicaid to catch a lot of problems and pay for them. Well, in an emergency, okay, fine. I'll look the other way for a little bit. But once the emergency ended, the public emergency was called to an end in 23, you've got to put the rules back into the system. This is true of Medicaid and the exchanges and Medicare across the board. And we didn't touch Medicare at all, but it was pretty clear that if we did not intervene on Medicaid, well, we basically had legalized money laundering taking place and tremendous amounts of fraud and people on the program who were never supposed to be on the program.
Stunning number of able-bodied men, as I understand it, on Medicaid in particular, true?
It's shocking for a bunch of reasons. First reason is 60 years ago when Medicaid and Medicare were both founded, there was no idea, no concept that you would ever have able-bodied people on Medicaid. Medicaid was for, as Hubert Humphrey said, it's a moral obligation, he argued, of government to take care of those at the dawn of life, the children, those at the twilight of life, the mature folks, and those living in the shadows. That use of light as an allegory is haunting, but it's important. Dawn, dusk, and those in the twilight, in the shadows. But it's not really about able-bodied people who are in the bright sunny days of their life sitting at home and watching on average 6.1 hours of television or just hanging out. It's actually not what God put you on the planet to do. You're supposed to go out and make the world better. So the president said, and Congress supported him with passage of the bill into law, we want you to go out and volunteer, get an education, get a job. We'll make it easy. We'll help you do those things. But you've got to get out of the house. Otherwise, we have generational poverty. We trap people in this, what they think we're building a little fort around them. It's not. It's a cage. You're boxing them into a life that they can't get out of. And if you don't start working, at some point, you get depressed. The high incidence of opiate use, depression. So what the president wanted to do is what most Americans wanted to do, which, 3/4 of Americans are supportive of this idea of getting people who can work to work. That's the kind of thing that also happens to save Medicaid. And there are other things that happen that I could bore you with for hours, but one of the things that was most frustrating is a rule was made last year that allowed states to pay 3 times more for Medicaid patients than for Medicare patients, which means if you're a Medicare person who's worked your whole life, paid into the system, you'd have to wait theoretically behind a Medicaid patient who was not working because they would reimburse a doctor 3 times more. Well, that's not fair, right? So all we said was make it equal. And you know what? That's what Obama had. We just took it back to beyond, before last year or before the pandemic. And the fact that that will be controversial is stunning to me because we got big fish to fry. We have major challenges to the health of the country. The MAHA movement was about that. We should not be pretending that this is hurting America when the reality is that we should be focused on how to get our young people healthy, to deal with the autism catastrophe, and reduce overall health expenses by being smarter about how we invest our money.
Have doctors been more or less forced, the business model, been forced to play, if you will, to Medicare and Medicaid in terms of the way they bill and the way hospitals and doctors' fee structures are set up? Has that been deleterious, ultimately, the way people practice medicine in the country?
There's no question that when you pay for things, people do those things. If you pay for them to do extra procedures, they'll do extra procedures. And Chris, you asked a very important question. We control about $1.75 trillion of expenditures at Medicare and Medicaid. That's twice the size of the Defense Department. That's how big this is. If we pay for the wrong thing, we'll get the wrong outcome. It is imperative for us not just to pay the bills, but pay the bills for the right types of activity, preventing illness and mental health conditions that otherwise would lead to all kinds of untoward events, making sure that we're taking care of kids and moms who are having babies. That's where the money should go. We need more primary care doctors in America. We need more nurses. What I don't need is throwing really expensive solutions that people don't want them or need them, and then paying extra to the people, doctors, hospitals, whatever, doing those procedures that may not be in the best interest of the patient. And those are the kinds of difficult decisions that you want your health guys to make. And we have excellent people in the organization who have domain expertise, who know the challenges and are aggressively moving to fix these problems. The president has already allowed us to do something around prior authorization. So we don't have insurance companies interfering with your ability to get the care you want from your doctor. This is infuriating to patients when they have insurance, they go to a doctor and the doctor says, well, you need to have your knee looked at, but I can't do it because you don't have, your insurance company hasn't approved it. We have a plan now for most favored nation pricing on drugs. So Americans should not pay 3 times more for the exact same drug made in the same factory in the same box as someone in Europe is paying. That's not fair to the American people, and the drug companies shouldn't do that. And they know that, so someone's got to call them up and say, guys, we're on to you. We know you don't want this. You went in this business because you care about people, and just don't forget that reality. Go back to your roots. Let's make these systems work. Right now in America, 1 in 3 patients who goes to a pharmacy does not pick up their prescription because they can't afford it. They've got to choose between food and drugs and prescriptions. And so that's not a good place to put the American people. The president wants those issues addressed, and we have the money to do it. We're spending twice as much as any other country on the planet. We just got to use the money more thoughtfully.
Just briefly on Medicare. Medicare, for seniors, it's critical. Everyone cares deeply about Medicare specifically. What would you say about the state of Medicare? Seniors who are on it, should they be concerned about it? Should you ever listen to politicians who claim it's being attacked?
We are not in any way reducing expenses or investment in Medicare. What we are going to want to do is make it more efficient. And that's primarily to help seniors get better quality care. Chris, I'll share a little secret with you. The most expensive medicine is bad medicine. The better care you get, the better you're going to do personally, but the less you're going to cost the system. And the reason, because if you get a bad operation, I've got to pay the doc who did the bad operation. Then I got to pay another good doc to fix the problem, and I got to pay for the complications. That's all expensive. So let's just get it right the first time. And I think that's how we think about Medicare. So much of what seniors in America want, the care they want, when they want it, and with the kinds of comprehensive support that they desire, it's out there. There's some parts of the country that do it well and some don't. Our job is to make sure we remind people who are failing that they could do better, and then to appropriately compensate or not, depending on what they're doing.
You've been good with your time. So last question, I'll just close with this. Broadly speaking, in this arena of the MAHA movement and HHS, what do you think so far in just 7 months? There have been massive changes. What do you think is going to be the lasting legacy of those of you inside Medicare, Medicaid, HHS, the consortium of all of you, NIH? I mean, already massive things have happened. Who knows what's to come in the next 3.5 years, but is there something you point to right now as I didn't see this ever happening and it's happened?
The holistic approach to making sure government works for people, especially in healthcare, is something that I did not know for sure was achievable. I am positive now that we can get some of the special interests out of the way. It turns out a lot of them don't want to be in the way anymore. So they're starting to come on board in a very big way. And the power to convene that the President and Secretary Kennedy have given us has been incredibly successful. Listen, you can pass a law, hard to do these days. You can pass rules and regulations. It's painful. People challenge it legally, and it's oftentimes you don't get the goal you really want, because the people who really know how to fix their business are the people in that business. So why not get them to do it under threat that if you don't do it yourself, we'll come in there with a sledgehammer. But you guys can nimbly make your systems work better. Go do it. We'll give you air cover. We'll make sure we protect you. And if you don't do it, we'll come after you.
Calley Means, if you missed the conversation last hour, who is one of the chief advisors to RFK Jr. over there at Health and Human Services, he said in the interview that it's spiritual war that they're engaged in at CDC, NIH, HHS, all the letters, FDA. It's spiritual war. I thought that was a very interesting choice of words. This was Monday when we were at the White House. That resonated with me then, and I ruminated on it for a while. And then the god-awful events of yesterday happened, and it drove home. And now I see
today, as of, I guess it was yesterday, but here this morning, the breaking news is she says she's not going anywhere. The big shakeup with the CDC director, Susan Menarez, ousted after her confirmation less than a month ago. Tensions between her and RFK Jr. Now, Bill Cassidy, you might remember, is the senator from Louisiana who was the sticky wicket amongst the Republicans for trying to get RFK Jr. approved, confirmed. And Cassidy is the guy who exerted significant influence over HHS appointments through a list of demands he made in exchange for confirming Kennedy. Remember that? Dr. Bill Cassidy, who's not running again. Remember that, Fast Eddie? Remember Dr. Cassidy's demands that he get his wish on certain input over there at the health institutes in order to confirm Kennedy?
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah. This is coming home to roost now. This is what this is. This is who this woman is. So I don't know what big pharma, what back channel, big money, Senator Bill Cassidy and this Menarez woman, I don't know what it's tied to, but I can assure you, make book on it. Ed, do you disagree that this woman and Cassidy, they're hip deep in establishment politics, establishment medicine, establishment pharma? They hate Kennedy's guts. Kennedy said, you're not on the same side of me and this president. You got to go. Think I got that about right?
I think so, because the Cassidy objecting to it was very strange in the first place.
Have you seen, apparently there are 4 different CDC leaders who have resigned over this, and they're saying that RFK Jr. is weaponizing public health. One of them is a guy called Dimitri Daskalakis, director of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. I just posted a profile photo of him on X this morning that surfaced. The guy's got full body tattoos at some gay rave. Like, go back to the Calley means conversation. This... And go back to the conversation that I've been having this morning about this guy that shot up the school. Folks, in every way, we are seeing facets of our government, whether it's medicine or wherever it is. This evil is pervasive, and it is permeating every sector of government and our lives. We are in a spiritual battle. And RFK Jr. is fighting it on the health front because our health agencies have been weaponized against you and me and certainly our children. They are fighting a spiritual battle at HHS. More in a minute. So I know that there is someone paying close attention to this story in Minnesota, not just because she lives there, but she's also just a brilliant talk show host who has been in the media covering this for a long time. And when she decided to join the Salem podcast family and launch her own show, I was just thrilled to make her acquaintance, and she has been a light of truth-telling. She left mainstream media where that was in short supply and decided it was time to start speaking up and speaking out on things that mattered to her. And aren't we glad that Michele Tafoya now has her own show, the Michele Tafoya program, which you can get on demand on the Salem News Channel and each and every day, the Michele Tafoya podcast. Check it out. And she's on X as well. Hey, Michele, glad to have you back. Good morning.
Good to talk to you. How are you?
Well, I'm well. It's such a dark and heavy day, and I know all of you in Minnesota are feeling it maybe more than most of us, but I do wonder, and this is maybe sort of a stupid question, but someone asked me this, and I'll ask you as a Minnesota resident, and I'm not saying this to be silly. I'm asking it sincerely. What is happening in your state? Why does it seem like Minnesota is uniquely unhinged? And I mean that earnestly. I don't understand the politics there.
I don't either. When I moved to listen, I grew up in California. I spent the first half of my life in California. I can't escape lunacy, apparently, no matter where I go. So then I end up in Minnesota. But when I got to Minnesota, it was a very normal place, quote unquote. You know, we had Governor Arnie Carlson. We had Norm Coleman as a senator. We had people with some sanity. Tim Pawlenty was a governor. And it was a beautiful, clean, safe state. I found it to be a great place to live. You know, I've stayed this long because of that. I met my husband there. We've raised our children. but it's gone insane, and I can't really tell you why. I can point to a couple things. Minneapolis, the city council is as leftist as you can get. I think this is happening in a lot of large cities with city councils. City councils, not that many people vote for city council, right?
Yeah,
you're running for city council, and people sort of get elected, and then they seem fine and whatever, and the next thing you know, they're saying that after the George Floyd thing, I remember specifically one of our city councilmen in Minneapolis, who was also a Cal Berkeley grad, was asked, well, you want to defund the police. What happens when, someone picks up the phone and calls 911? And he said, well, that comes from a place of privilege, doesn't it? So this whole kind of Marxist theology, I would call it almost, it has infiltrated the Minneapolis City Council. So, look no further than Tim Walz. This is a governor who looked so innocuous, looked so just like this sort of nice dude, gets elected, and lo and behold, over the course of 2 terms, pretty much wrecks the state, and was not vetted until he was Kamala Harris's running mate. And the national media did it for us. And now we see just how unhinged he is. So those are a couple of issues that have a massive trickle-down effect.
Michele Tafoya is with us, host of the Michele Tafoya podcast. Download that, subscribe, and watch it here on the Salem News Channel as well if you're not listening to it on the podcast network. You named a couple of names. I mean, let's go to the mayor of Minneapolis yesterday. Part of his reaction here to this shooting in number 17, 3617, Paul, if you please, for Michele.
Directed at our trans community. Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity. We should not be operating out of a place of hate for anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids. Kids died today. This needs to be about them. This needs to be wrapping our arms around these families.
I just it's almost too much to listen to that guy, but that's the mayor of Minneapolis. We need to love our kids. You're damn straight we do, and that's by telling them the truth, first of all, and telling them that this lie from the pit of hell that you can change your gender is not loving at all, Michele.
No, it really, that statement was so full of, you just wanted to scream, stop. Do you not hear yourself? We all love our children. We're heartbroken in Minnesota over these children, absolutely devastated. But this person identified as trans, and no, we're not going after the trans community, although that is a community that certainly needs some looking into when we start to see this trend of this kind of violence. And this person's background is perfectly it's not off limits to look into that, to ask yourself about the mental illness associated. There's no way you can watch the videos of this person, read the manifesto, look at what he was thinking and doing and the way he was planning, and not come away thinking this person was mentally ill. And so we have to start looking at this quote-unquote trans community and saying, what kind of lies are we selling? What are we doing when we're telling kids, yeah, sure, you can be the opposite sex? Yeah, it is a fiction. It is a fiction that we're selling, and then there's so much that goes along with the fiction, a medication, name change, the way you're treated, your pronouns, all of this stuff. This isn't anti-trans. This is pro-truth.
Beautifully said, Michele Tafoya. I go down the list of Keith Ellison, Tim Walz, Ilhan Omar, this mayor. I mean, that's who makes up the political class in Minnesota. It sounds like something you'd find in Southern California, Michele.
Totally. It's been like a creep kind of thing that's happened, and I will tell you that the issue of abortion has been used as a cudgel. It's been used to elect these really extreme leftists. And unfortunately, the Republican Party in Minnesota has to do a serious self-scout and say, what are we doing wrong? How do we keep losing? It's some really reasonable people. And one of the problems is that in Minnesota, the Republican Party is they are so pro-life that you can't even suggest, what if we had a pro-choice Republican? What if we had a pro-life Republican who says legal, safe, and rare rather than let's ban all abortions? But the Minnesota Republican Endorsement Committee makes it it's a litmus test. You must say you want to ban abortion. And the Minnesota Democrats use that against the Republicans in such an effective way that they scare the hell out of anyone for voting for Republicans. So Republicans need to take a darn good look at themselves, a hard look at themselves, the way they're communicating, the way they're talking about that issue, which clearly is a divisive issue in Minnesota, and find a way to some middle ground on that to not scare the voters away. That has been a major sticking point for Republicans and for this quote-unquote endorsement process, which is done by a handful of Republicans in Minnesota, when the vast majority of Republicans are pretty moderate.
I've come around over the years when talking about that particular issue, as much debate as there is around it. The one thing I've always respected and appreciated was the position that being pro-life, you ought to lead with being pro-empathy for a scared pregnant mother. And
absolutely.
If you're able to somehow lead with empathy and compassion and say, we're here for you in this ride from beginning to end, and we will not leave you in your time of fear and need. If you can lead with that, I think that's going to go a long way to changing the discussion, to your point, Michele. But let me pivot.
Yeah.
Just because of time. You're a mother, and I'm a father, and I think you have some teenagers, if memory serves. I know I do.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm thinking all the time about how I've parented and how I've screwed things up. I don't come from a place of sanctimony, but I do believe that being present, talking to, praying with, regularly touching and engaging your kids and not handing them over to somebody else and trusting that they've got your kid's best interest at heart is the best way to parent.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that sounds obvious, but I don't think enough of us do it.
I agree with you. And when you, again, I would go to this case in Minnesota of the individual who shot up the church. How did parents not even have an inkling of this person's state of mind, of their it's mind-boggling to me. And it is a challenge, particularly when you get to the teenage level and they spend a lot more time in their room or on their phone or on their devices and not with you. You must force the issue. And this is another thing that I would say that the left says, these are all of our children. Well, no, they're not. They're not your children. They're my children. They're not the school's children. They're my children to raise. And so that's something people need to be very conscientious of when it sounds so warm and fuzzy that, we're all going to raise, because they're really all of our children. No, they're not. No one cares about your kids more than you do. So you really have to show up and be there and be present. And that means sometimes putting down your own device and making sure that your kids know that they have access to you all the time.
As my preacher says, that'll preach. Michele Tafoya, amen. Nothing more I can say about it than that. That's why we had you on today. Thank you, and I hope everybody checks out the Michele Tafoya Show, the podcast, each and every day. Subscribe
Thanks,
so you
Chris.
never miss an episode. Thank you, Michele.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Back with more in a moment on The Stigall Show. You know, Ed, I have this whole roster of Democrats saying ugly, stupid, awful things yesterday about prayers and gun control, and I don't even want to hear from them. Somebody emailed and said, I wish you wouldn't even show the picture of the trans shooter or talk about the manifesto. I agree about the manifesto thing. I have no intention of that. I mean, the photo is whatever it is. I'm at a point with these people that highlighting them in any way or pretending that their voices are even valid is difficult for me. Make sense?
It does, yes. Yeah, it does.
I mean, I'm looking literally at the roster of idiots from Jen Psaki to Michael Steele to Ilhan Omar to the mayor of Minneapolis, Keith Ellison, the AG. I got a whole roster of these Democrats all saying various levels of loathsome gun control, anti-prayer rot that is not the answer in a dark day like this. They have created and caused so much of the sickness and the pain and the illness and the debauchery that is celebrated today by the American left. They create these things. They embrace this madness. They celebrate this madness. And then when madness acts out in the evil way it's prone to do, then they suggest that it's somehow our Bill of Rights that's to blame for the celebration of their madness turning a firearm on children. I don't have time for it. I don't treat it as legitimate. I don't think these people are even, I mean, they're evil, so they're serious in that sense, but politically they're not interested in winning hearts and minds anymore. They're willing to do whatever they must do to make you subservient to them. And it occurs to me that over and over and over, that's the theme of Democrats. We're going to force that's been sort of the running theme this week. And I know I'm not suggesting that Cracker Barrel and men cheering in NFL games is the same thing, but it is kind of the same thing. It is kind of the same thing. It's all shades of the same thing. The running theme is the American people don't want what the left in this country, the cultural Marxists, are selling and trying to engineer. The country doesn't want it. The country continues to reject it, and it doesn't stop them from continuing to ram it home and force it down your throat and forcing you to do it. Forcing you to embrace it, forcing you to endorse it, forcing you to take that shot, even if you disagree or don't think it works or even know it doesn't work or maybe even question the efficacy of it. This CDC woman, do you hear today she refuses to leave? She was fired, and the news today is, I'm not going anywhere. You can't make me leave my job. Who the hell do you think you are? Nobody elected you to anything. You serve at the pleasure of the President of the United States, for whom we voted. You answer to us, lady. I don't know who the hell you think you are. But these voices from hell, these wicked, evil voices from hell that slip their ways into positions of power and then force all of us to live under their rule of darkness, we are absolutely this is as spiritual as it gets. It is a spiritual war we're fighting. And look, I'll tell you this, my pastor has long warned about the day. Being a Christian, historically speaking, it's been a deadly proposition. And it looks like it's becoming more so every day. This lunatic, this dark, sinister lunatic yesterday went after people of faith very specifically. It is a difficult, narrow walk to walk with Jesus Christ. It's difficult and it's a narrow way. And it's also going to mean difficult times, discomfort in conversation, and yes, maybe even death. And that's why sometimes for some people who have a withering faith or question or none at all, it's why it's just so easy to acquiesce and allow the darkness that occupies some of these leadership spaces to just have their way. And so I say to those of us of faith right now, we have got to proverbially, figuratively, in prayer, we got to lock and load. The moral backsliding has to stop. And I think it is, by the way. I don't want to close on a negative note. I actually think, and I see it in my children's generation, I see there is a resurgence. Young people who want truth. They want a war against this too. They need a baseline of truth. And the baseline of truth is the Word of God. And restoring that moral clarity and a sense of purpose and something greater than self in our children, it's the only way we're going to get this country back. Not from our elected leaders. I'll see you tomorrow. So that's a wrap for another Chris Stigall Show podcast. Thanks for committing to it, listening to it all the way through. You're a fighter. I like that about you. Hope you'll leave it a 5-star review and a written review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We'll see you next time here on the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.